Nowadays, it seems like free-to-play games are everywhere, and a lot of the times, the service isn't really all that great. I mean, sometimes it can be good and there's a lot of content, but recently, the newer games that have tried free-to-play, yikes, it's been wild. But there's some game series that have gone free-to-play that you wouldn't think would need to go free-to-play or do like this whole live service model, but they do it anyways. Like Gran Turismo? What? Gran Turismo is one of Sony's biggest flagships for a racing series when it comes to PlayStation. It's been a staple for decades. And I bet you a lot of you didn't realize that they released a free-to-play game. And this is a little different because it's not necessarily a live service game. It's just a free-to-play game that isn't a main game, but it's supposed to be treated like something. But they argued it's also not a demo for the main games. And I'm going to be absolutely real. This game by far has the worst title for a video game I've heard, especially one that's jumping into the free-to-play. We're talking about My First Gran Turismo. That's the name of the game. I'm not making it up. This is what they decided to call their free-to-play game. What is it and who is it for? Okay, My First Gran Turismo. It's a free-to-play version of Gran Turismo available for the PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 4 that launched in December of last year. It was developed by the same team that did Gran Turismo 7 and still published by Sony, and it reuses assets from Gran Turismo 7. Now, the idea behind it is it's aimed for brand new players who haven't played much or at all, and it's supposed to be like a more accessible entry point into the series that's more beginner friendly, and they even use the phrase that it's for ages 7 to 77. Sorry if you're 78, you can go f yourself. But it's not a demo, it's a standalone experience that's 2 to 3 hours long, and you can transfer your stuff from that version of the game to the premium Gran Turismo 7 version if you purchase the game. It's also single player only. There's no multiplayer online, but no purchase necessary. This is such a weird one, and honestly, sure, it's more elaborate than a demo, but the name kills me. Like, it just makes me want to never touch it because it just sounds like, I don't know, like a game literally for babies, but looking at the gameplay, it's just Gran Turismo. Like, who are they marketing this to? Why did they name it that? There's 18 cars, right? There's 3 classic tracks. There's different game modes. There's even VR support. But the name, oh my God, I'm sorry. I'm hung up on that. It's really not the biggest deal, but it really bothers me. Has anyone actually played this? I'm sure someone has because it's free, but wow. There's a lot of game series, though, that have tried to dip their toes into doing a free-to-play to see if that attracts more people in, and maybe they can microtransaction their way into making a big profit. And I don't know why some of these are just like really bizarre picks. There's a Street Fighter game that came out in Japan exclusively in 2008 called Street Fighter Online Mouse Generation. What the hell is this? Okay, at first I thought this was a game about fighting mice. That is not the case. It is a PC version of Street Fighter where you're supposed to use your PC mouse for combat, which already sounds like a terrible idea considering like fighting games like Street Fighter are known literally for their buttons. Look at the special controllers that they sell that people buy because button combos are a big part. Using a mouse is such a weird idea to me. And this game launched back in 2008. It's a game that had microtransactions in it, which is pretty ambitious for a 2008 title. It even had like an in-game gachapon system, and you could purchase like extra parts for outfits and customize your character. Weirdly enough, this game had a very large number of licensed characters from other series, but not enough characters from like the Street Fighter series, which made people wonder like what is going on here. I mean, they had so many different licensed characters. It had characters based off of novels, manga, and anime. There's characters based on Wuxia novelist Louis Cha's characters. There were cyborgs from the Cyborg 009 manga. Barack Obama was a character? Okay. Well, I mean, why not? We ball. The game's service did shut down a little over a year after it launched, and yeah, this game doesn't exist anymore. But I don't think it was very popular because people didn't want to play a fighting game with a mouse as like a main input. Now, Street Fighter's not the only game to try doing a free-to-play model to some extent. The King of Fighters did some stuff with like mobile and online spin-offs using the brand name. There was like the King of Fighters 98 Ultimate Match Online, which was a mobile title that was free to play. And then there was King of Fighters AFK, which is an early access. In 2013, there was the release of Tekken Revolution, which was a free-to-play fighting version of Tekken. This one's interesting because it reused assets from Tekken Tag Tournament 2, and it had a reduced roster, and it included a progression system where you could upgrade characters in matches. And while it launched in 2013, it ended in 2017. And then Tekken 8 would release a little later, and they did not do a free-to-play model. They went full price game and had monetization elements in the game. Essentially, they realized they could monetize their game and have it free to play and people would play it for a little while, or they could sell the game for full price and then monetize it on top of that. And that's what they chose to do moving forward. So they shut down the free to play one. I don't know. Fighting games are weird, man.
Also, Forza is another racing series that got a pretty weird free to play game. Like when Elijah just talked about My First Gran Turismo and how the name of that was weird, what Microsoft did with Forza here is actually even weirder, because at least My First Gran Turismo was built from the ground up as a Gran Turismo game. But Forza didn't even get that when it came to the first free-to-play game. Let me explain. In 2018, Microsoft launched a free-to-play racing game called Miami Street, which was developed by Electric Square, some random studio that they hired to make this single-player only game for Windows 10 devices. Windows 10 devices, I think, means you could play it on a Surface tablet also besides a PC. Now, mind you, this game was really bad. Like, gameplay was boring because the car would steer itself and you just had to accelerate and brake. And on top of that, it also had this atrocious time gating system that would mean after playing for a little bit, you'd have to wait for like the currency to recharge, or you could pay to play right away. Also, cars were locked behind slow progressions and paywalls. It was just a very stereotypical mobile slop game. But one day, someone at Microsoft or Xbox came up with the great idea to rebrand Miami Street to Forza Street and launched the first ever Forza free-to-play game that way in 2019. And what changed about the game, other than the name? Nothing really. I mean, there was some regular content updates that had released, and there was a mobile version that got eventually released as well, but this was basically the same as Miami Street, now just called Forza Street. Actually, in the official announcement for Forza Street from Microsoft, they straight up lie, because they say Forza Street is built from the ground up to bring Forza to PC and mobile gamers around the world. That is just straight up deceptive. Like, this game is just a rebrand of this other game. Anyways, after it rebranded, the game was still very poopy. And, you know, now it was a poopy Forza game, so I don't know what the plan was here. And it continued to get support until early 2022, when it got its final update and was shut down 3 months after that. So yeah, that was the first free-to-play Forza game, and honestly, Microsoft should have stopped there, but they tried one more time, and they released a free Forza tile matching game that was called Forza Customs, which got shut down less than 2 years after its launch. And just putting Forza and tile matching in the same sentence is probably more than enough to explain why this was also stupid. Honestly, my advice to Microsoft and Xbox is just stop. Please.
We should talk about Overwatch 2 because it's kind of hilarious how this game handled the free-to-play jump. It's unique for sure and pretty stupid. You see, in 2022, Overwatch 2 launched in this like early access type state as a free-to-play successor to Overwatch 1, and they were moving free-to-play. It was a part of this big fundamental change. There was no more 6v6, it was 5v5, and there was going to be a new content cadence with each season, and the whole game was getting a brand new monetization structure. So now that the game was free, they would have to make some money in a different way, which already feels, you know, kind of shady for people who spent money on Overwatch 1, losing access to the game that they already spent money on. And now everybody gets the game for free, but they still will have to, you know, pay into the monetization for new content. It was already a mess to begin with. On top of that, with this transition, loot boxes, in the way that they originally were, where you could just like buy them, were removed from Overwatch 2 and replaced with a battle pass and a rotating store and direct cosmetic purchases. And while loot boxes had a terrible reputation, the people who had paid into Overwatch 1 kind of liked the way that loot boxes worked because they were like earnable. A lot of the time, they're pretty easy to get. You didn't have to spend a bunch of money. And the whole battle pass system was just very different. It felt like they were trying to Fortniteify Overwatch. And the prices. Some of the skins that came out for Overwatch 2 were a little insane. Like, some skins were like $20. There's mythic skins that are like $40, and this is still kind of a problem today. I was hyped when Overwatch 2 was doing the big Persona crossover, and I looked at those prices and sheesh, there was no way I was spending money on that. I mean, this is an egregious cost for skins, right? I mean, I know Call of Duty does it too, but like someone's got to stop spending money on it, because the 1% of people who are buying these skins regularly and buying these expensive bundles are literally funding and enabling this to become the norm. Now, on top of that, Overwatch 2 was criticized pretty heavily early on for just like the grind it took to get in-game currency if you wanted to like earn cosmetics for free. And on top of that, the Overwatch 2 like free track gave very, very little, which made the shop feel like it was kind of pay gated. And then there were always like the new heroes coming to the game, and those would be locked behind the battle pass. And new heroes were free for all in Overwatch 1. Overwatch 2, you had to get a battle pass and deal with all of that if you wanted to get the new character that would come out. And this runs into an issue that we see in some of these games, Rainbow Six specifically, but other games we play as well, where they introduce a new character, you have to pay money to get the new character, but then the character's really overpowered early on. So then it becomes this like pay to win cycle where you want to keep up, so you buy the new character so that you can win. And then when the next character comes out, boom, that character that you had bought before, it gets nerfed, and then they're not as good anymore. It's ridiculous, the like psychological operations that these video game companies sometimes do when they handle all of this. And Overwatch was already getting criticism for like the lack of promised content that was supposed to be there at launch of Overwatch 2, like story, campaign, and all that. But what's interesting is more recently, it seems like Overwatch has taken steps over the years to just undo the damage that they did with Overwatch 2. It's taken them years, but slowly, every update, there's something that reverts the game back to how it was closer in Overwatch 1, which I find hilarious. If you follow the roadmap, it was like Overwatch 1 was in one state, Overwatch 2 changed a bunch of stuff and everyone hated it, and then slowly over the next few years, they would do these updates that would bring the game back little by little closer to what Overwatch 1 is. I mean, like now you can play 6v6 again, loot boxes are back, you don't have to pay in the battle pass to get the new heroes when they come out, there's guaranteed drop rates in the new loot boxes. It's so weird when they're like, look, new feature coming to Overwatch 2, and it's just something that had been taken away a while ago, but hey, at least they're doing something about it. It's a little late to be doing it, but better late than never, I guess. I don't know. I think they're really like panicking over Marvel Rivals becoming so successful that now they're realizing that they have to mix things up. And hey, Stadium is pretty fun, or at least it was fun until they added Tracer and Torburn, this guy, into the game. They're a little overpowered, but it's okay. I'm hanging in there. I'm hoping that they nerf them. Please. Blizzard.
Okay, so I know most people watching this probably don't care about soccer, but this is still an interesting story of a franchise that went free to play, and it went so badly that it even landed on the list of video games notable for negative receptions on Wikipedia. When I was growing up in the early 2000s, I was really into football or soccer or whatever you want to call it. And obviously, FIFA was already a big franchise and was already around for a while. But there was another soccer franchise made by Konami that would also get yearly games and directly competed with FIFA. And that franchise was called Pro Evolution Soccer. At least that's what I knew it under. But in the US, people might know it as Goldstorm, ISS Pro Evolution, ESPN MLS Game Night, or ESPN MLS Extra Time 2002, or even World Soccer Winning 11 International. For some reason it had a bunch of different names over the years, and they kept changing the name with every release for a while. But in 2008, they would just call it Pro Evolution Soccer almost everywhere. It was a good competitor and sold a decent amount of copies, not as much as FIFA, but still, it wasn't like a terrible game experience. The thing they struggled most with was that they had to change which clubs and leagues they had the rights to all the time, so your favorite team might not have been included in every version of Pro Evolution Soccer over the years. Nonetheless, Pro Evolution Soccer hung in there, getting yearly games from 1997 all the way until 2019. The 2019 release did see another name change and now is called eFootball Pro Evolution Soccer 2020. And the following year, they did a $40 update for the 2020 version instead of doing a full price game, and this one was titled eFootball Pro Evolution Soccer 2021 Season Update. And it would just update some clubs, players, etc., and was basically the same thing that a new game would be, but a little bit cheaper and just an update. But around the same time, they announced that they were also developing a new path forward for the series in the form of a free-to-play game called eFootball, which would eliminate the Pro Evolution Soccer naming completely, and they would focus on a live service model with every year getting a big new update for that season of soccer. So in 2021, eFootball released, and it was very badly received. The graphics were just awful, there was tons of glitches, and and the game just felt like an empty shell when it came to content. Konami did try to do a PR spin in this and apologized, and they said the game was not finished, and they made some excuses, blah 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 blah. And yeah, as I said, this landed the game on the list of games with notable negative receptions on Wikipedia, and is a prime example on like a very bad negatively received launch. Now 4 years later, after launch, eFootball is still getting those major yearly updates, with the season 2026 update having just released in August. Has the game improved though? Well, on one hand, of course, because it was so broken and awful at launch, it could only go up from there, and on the other hand, not really, because every time I tried reading like someone talking about the state of the game nowadays, it was just a negative opinion. Like there's still tons of gameplay issues or server issues causing lags, and then you lose the game because you're playing online. And also a lot of people complain about the monetization system, calling it borderline pay to win. The game is also on mobile devices, and a lot of people tie that to the predatory monetization model. Like, of course, they have the pack opening stuff, and they have mechanics tied to making you spend money every year over and over again to keep your players in your Dream Team mode, which is like their version of Ultimate Team, which you might know from FIFA or Madden. So overall, the game did improve over the years, but it still kind of sucks, and it's still just one of those sports games, but at least you don't have to pay $70 each year. I guess that's an upside. But of course, with eFootball being a free-to-play game, they will still try their best to extract at least those $70 a year from you.
Do you guys ever hear of Dragon's Dogma Online? This was an attempt by Capcom to turn the series into a free-to-play live service, essentially MMORPG, but more of an action RPG with live service elements, but some MMO stuff. It was a branch of the original 2012 single-player game released 3 years later, and while it kept a lot of the core combat mechanics and class systems from the original game, and then the game would have rolling updates that would add new content in new updates, and it was actually pretty ambitious. So what happened here? Well, Capcom wanted the live service money, so they introduced, or they launched with, an in-game currency, which you could buy with real money, but the game didn't really do too well. It didn't launch into the West, so there was the Japanese version that was still moderately successful, at least for a while, and this one's interesting because I think for the most part, the game was actually pretty well liked by the people that did get to play it. However, with it only having a Japanese release, made the game not very accessible, which meant the game itself and the service itself was limited to a pretty niche audience, and while it did have a dedicated player base, it was a small player base, and I don't think the game series itself was set up to sustain long term, or Capcom wasn't really willing to keep this going, and they wanted to start working on another sequel to the original game, so the service shut down after 4 years. There are preservation attempts out there to keep this game alive. I think the writing was already on the wall, though, towards the end of the life of the game, as updates were slowing down. The player base that remained knew that their time was limited. They knew the end was coming, even before it was announced, and then it eventually shut down. So, RIP. But hey, it was at least not a completely awful game like some of the games we've talked about.
Ace Combat also dove into a free-to-play game with Ace Combat Infinity that released in 2014 and was exclusive to the PlayStation 3. The game featured a single-player story campaign and an online multiplayer mode that was focused on co-op missions. The gameplay was pretty good and stayed true to a classic Ace Combat experience. It also reused the engine of Ace Combat Assault Horizon, which also released on PlayStation 3. But there was kind of a big catch though. The game was kind of pay-to-play. And I tried my best understanding this because of course the game is shut down, so I can't really go check it out for myself, but from my understanding, there was a free currency that would recharge every hour, and you could store 3 of that currency at a time, like maximum 3. But also they did have a paid version of this currency as well that was separate. Now every mission you did consumed 1 fuel, so if you tried playing for free, you could do 3 missions and then you would have to wait, or you could pay and you get some more of those tokens and then you get to play right away. There was some ways to earn the paid fuel through challenges that they would introduce after some feedback, but overall it still seemed like a bad system. The game itself was actually enjoyed by a lot of people though, and the gameplay was fun. So overall the monetization system wasn't that atrocious, or a lot of people were okay with the way it worked because the game was still very good at its core. The game did get regular updates as well in the form of new airplanes and stuff for about 3 years before it was announced that it would be shutting down in March of 2018. Kind of a weird story, but 1 year after the shutdown, the next normal Ace Combat game would release with Ace Combat 7 Skies Unknown. So at least Ace Combat Infinity didn't kill the franchise, so it wasn't necessarily a failure. or it wasn't like a win either. It was just kind of like something that existed.
Dead or Alive, another fighting series, also did a free-to-play jump, but a little bit later than the rest of them. This is 2019, where we had Dead or Alive 6 Core Fighters, which released a few weeks after Dead or Alive 6 released. And this was available on PS4, Xbox One, and Steam, and it was a free-to-play, cut-down version of the full Dead or Alive 6 package. So you could download it for free, play offline, or even online matches, but you had a smaller starting roster. To be more specific, when you launched the game up, you had 4 playable characters to choose from. And then you could play like training, versus, or Dead or Alive quest modes, whatever that is. And then you could buy additional characters individually for $4 each, or you could buy like a bundle that had the full roster. So on one hand, you know, this was a free-to-play jump, and you could still buy the game outright, which I think is at least better than putting it free-to-play and then, you know, microtransactioning the hell out of it, which for a fighting game where there's different characters, very easily can intentionally or unintentionally make the game pay to win, because then you have to buy the correct character or you just lose. This still got quite a bit of backlash because of the microtransactions everywhere, and fair enough, but I do want to make this argument here that at the very least Dead or Alive 6 Core Fighters wasn't as egregious as other games that had made the jump to free-to-play. This is actually really similar to what Rainbow Six Siege has done with their free-to-play jump, and they used to do a starter edition, which should have been free-to-play at the beginning anyways because you had less characters, but that's besides the point. That's what they're doing now, pretty much. But nowadays, this game's player base is pretty small. They ended official support in 2022, but they didn't like shut the servers down, so I think you can still jump on and play. So that's interesting. And they did this whole thing a bit. Like, I mean, Dead or Alive 6 is the one that we're talking about specifically, but they did Dead or Alive 5 Core Fighters, which I'm pretty sure is like the same thing. But yeah, you guys get what I'm talking about here. We're not going to go into every example of games that offer like a free demo version, but the ones that are more interesting, like this, and when we talked about my first Gran Turismo, I feel like stand out because they're just like these unique scenarios, and then they're also representative of like the genre as a whole. But there's even weirder games that did free to play where you're like, why did they do this? Do you guys remember that game series Fear? Did you know in 2014 they launched Fear Online, which was a wild premise in itself? This was developed by InPlay Interactive, which was a South Korean studio, and then published by Area Games for the release in the West. And it launched in 2014 on PC, and it was a free-to-play Fear game. And it wasn't like a traditional Fear experience. It was an online multiplayer shooter that just so happened to be set in the same universe. Now, this game was interesting. It had PvP modes like Team Deathmatch and some other stuff, and had some co-op missions that were inspired by Fear's horror elements, but they were just trying to like mix, you know, the horror atmosphere with faster paced multiplayer gunplay. And I don't think it really worked all that well. Now, of course, they were doing the whole monetization thing for 2014, so they had cosmetic items and all of that. I think they even did some weird stuff where you could upgrade weapons and even like rent better things or get boosts if you paid more money, you know, the good old stuff from free to play type games. And the reception was mostly negative. Surprise, surprise. Pretty much the big criticism was poor balance, generic gameplay, lack of polish, minimal connections to what made the original Fear feel special, which, you know, when you drop the story, you know, you don't make that a big focus. You lose the atmosphere and the fear element of a game called Fear. People don't really like it. And I think the Steam reviews showed that. So less than a year after its launch, the game got shut down in 2015. And it doesn't seem like there's any interest by even the fans to do like a fan server revival. So this game's done.
Let's do a quick rapid fire round with some games that I had on my list that we have talked about in previous videos. So I'm not going to go too in depth, but I will tell you which video you can watch after this to learn more about each game. In early 2024, we did a video on dead games that shut down but then came back, and we talked about Battlefield Heroes, which got a revival project made by fans. Basically, this was a third-person Battlefield game with cartoony graphics and microtransactions that you could play in your browser. Kind of a cool thing for 2009, and it was the first free Battlefield game, but eventually it got shut down. There was some more free-to-play Battlefield games over the years, like 2010's Battlefield Online for the Korean market, or Battlefield Play for Free from 2011, which was another browser game, alongside a free phone game called Battlefield 3 Aftershock, which was released as a promotion for Battlefield 3. All of them are shut down or delisted, and on those last ones we go more in depth on those in our games that you never knew existed video from September of this year, so not that long ago. That video actually included a bunch of games that would also fit in this list. So real quick, there was a free-to-play mobile game game called Contra Returns that had RPG elements and a gacha system that initially released in China before rolling out worldwide in beta. Then there was Dynasty Warriors Online, which was a free-to-play MMO, and also Need for Speed Edge or Need for Speed Online existed, plus Need for Speed World, a free-to-play MMO, was playable at some point too. As I said, all these have more in-depth segments in our previous video on games you never knew existed. Then going back to 2023, we did a video on dead battle royale games that failed, and we gave an honorable mention to Vampire the Masquerade Bloodhounds, since it did have low players, but it wasn't shut down yet. And well, this was a free-to-play battle royale entry into the Vampire the Masquerade / World of Darkness series, and now we are here 2 years later, and they had just announced that the game servers will close in April of 2026 because of the player numbers being so low that it's not sustainable anymore. And because of that, I did actually download the game last night and I played it a little bit, and I mean, it's fine, and I did get a chicken dinner, so I guess there's that. So I'll have a 100% win rate on Vampire the Masquerade Bloodhunt.
I actually played Quake Champions back when that came out on Steam, and surprisingly enough, I'm going to make the argument that Quake Champions falls into this rare category of a free-to-play game, like from a series that went free to play, that actually wasn't the worst. Quake Champions is interesting. It was essentially a modern take on the OG Quake games with a little bit of a twist, maybe a controversial twist. They decided to make it a hero shooter, so there's like different heroes that have special abilities, but I gotta give credit where credit's due. The gameplay, at the very least, still feels like a Quake game, which I think helped because in general, despite the fact that the game never really stayed or even got popular to begin with, I mean, it has a relatively small player base. The people who play the game like it, I think. I mean, I remember playing and I was like, oh, this is kind of fun. It's like Quake. And then I never really played it again.
Was this a console game?
I don't think it did come out on console.
So this is just PC, wow.
Yeah, just PC only. Has a small but dedicated player base. They did have some interesting crossovers early on. Like, I think BJ Blazkowicz from Wolfenstein was in there. I think the biggest drawback of Quake Champions is the fact that they did remove some of the things that made the OG Quakes cool, like having mods available, having like server browsers. Neither of those are in the new game, which does take away some of the raw early feelings of how the old Quake games were when you played online. So I think that tied with the fact that maybe the marketing wasn't really huge on it, I think kind of just made it where the game didn't really get the widespread popularity that they had hoped for. But I also don't feel like the effort to make the game like reach a lot of people to even know that it existed in the first place was that much of an effort either. Hey, but at the very least, for a game that, when did it come out? 2018? And it, you know, has a very, very small player base, it didn't shut down. So it's still there, you can still play it, and that's better than a lot of the other games that we talked about. So good for Quake Champions. I can't dog on it too much. It exists, it was free, it wasn't too aggressive with how they did stuff. The Champions ability stuff a little goofy maybe, but it wasn't that bad. Overall, it's a net positive game.
Unreal Tournament was another franchise that tried going free to play, and not just with another like game in the franchise, they actually tried rebooting it with this free to play title. And the whole thing was that they're going back to the roots with fast-paced gameplay and being an arena shooter to the core. And the game was even just named Unreal Tournament, signifying the reboot. It was being built on Unreal Engine 4 by a team of Epic veterans and the community, and it was completely open source. So the community could actually contribute to the development directly, which was kind of cool. And they even had a marketplace that was gonna fund the ongoing development, and everybody was able to submit like skins and cosmetics and stuff like that, and then Epic Games would take a cut of the sales from it, and it was like a cool system, kind of like how the Steam market works. And this all sounds like a cool concept, and in 2014 the pre-alpha started and the game did receive multiple updates over the years. But in 2017 something massive happened and the gaming landscape would change massively, and especially Epic Games as a company would change when Fortnite blew up, and Unreal Tournament was one of the many victims of an all-hands-on approach to Fortnite. So the developers were moved off Unreal Tournament, and then they had to work on Fortnite. So after 2017-2018, there was no more updates for the game. The servers did remain online for a couple more years until Epic Games did shut them down in 2023. And at this point, the game itself was still in alpha. Since it was open source though, the community did actually pick up running the servers and even launched unofficial patches over the years. And you know, there's different servers and stuff, like you can still play the game today. It's just still in that pre-alpha phase with some fixes. It's still a little sad that a project that sounded so promising early on stopped so abruptly. There was another free-to-play related thing with Unreal Tournament though recently, because in December of 2022 a Steam page for Unreal Tournament 3X was leaked, with this being a free-to-play version of Unreal Tournament 3 that had all the content included. This was kind of big for Unreal fans because Unreal Tournament 3 servers were gonna get shut down in 2023 as well, so the 3X version releasing the same year that the servers shut down was like perfect timing. But that Steam page was taken down relatively quickly, and we never heard anything again about Unreal Tournament 3X, so I don't think it's ever coming out, or I don't think it's real. So maybe it was just a mistake that they had listed the Steam page. Maybe it was just like for something that they were maybe gonna do, or I don't know. It just like never got any official information other than the Steam page.
There's two games I want to talk about, and they're completely unrelated from each other, but also related in this regard. Let's talk about Castlevania and Animal Crossing. Pretty cool, right? What do they have in common?
They're both from Japan.
Yeah, there you go. They also both had free-to-play spin-offs available on mobile devices that I don't think were ultimately the most successful things. One was more successful than the other. Castlevania did Grimoire of Souls, which was a free-to-play something. It was like Castlevania gameplay, but it had microtransactions in it. I don't know how to explain it. At first, I thought this was like a multiplayer type game. It wasn't. It was like free-to-play with microtransactions, and then later it got re-released as a premium ad-free title through Apple's arcade thing that they have. But it was like the classic 2D side-scrolling type game. There was like mission stages rather than like an interconnected map, which I feel like kind of breaks up the Castlevania experience, not being able to just go from one place to the other, having like little levels like it's a Mario type game. And then you could level up your gear and you wanted to improve all of it. And they tried to do the whole like, you know how they do the type of things with mobile games? Like it's never just a straightforward game, right? There's always a little gacha system in there. And this one had that too.
Always some BS.
So people didn't like the gacha system. They didn't like the grind, the lack of exploration, the game. The combat was kind of stiff.
What did they like about it?
I don't think anything. The game shut down in less than a year after it launched. But the takeaway here is mobile games aren't really fun to talk about. Animal Crossing did a mobile game. I talk about Animal Crossing all the time, and they did Animal Crossing Pocket Camp, and it was a mobile version of Animal Crossing that no matter how many times I wanted to get into it, because I do think the furniture and decorations and everything that game had to offer were really cool looking, the gameplay loop was so tediously boring and restrictive in all the weirdest ways, because the game makes you think it's not restrictive, but deep down as you play, you realize this is just taking forever to do anything. I don't know how to explain it, but I was always really, really bored with Animal Crossing Pocket Camp. And it looks like a game that would have everything you could want. You can decorate an RV, but you can't decorate a town. You can, make some friends with the villagers, but they're not really the same style of friends that you had in a mainline game. And the list goes on and on. So Pocket Camp did make it like 7 years after it launched before they shut down the original Pocket Camp and then released a paid version for $20, mind you, that removes a lot of the time gating and gives you access to like event items that were time restricted before, which is better than just shutting down altogether. But man, I don't know. I wish they would just make Animal Crossing have more support than like a year like they did with New Horizons, and we can just skip the whole mobile thing altogether, and I'd be happy with that. That's my rant. I'm sorry. You want to take it away?
So let's say on the topic of mobile games, and I did some research about Final Fantasy for this video, like Final Fantasy free-to-play games, and I came to the realization there's a long list of free-to-play games that Final Fantasy have had over the years, and like 95% of them were mobile games. So most of them are shut down, and there's like a lot to go through, like just too many to go through in one video, right? But I counted 6 ones that are still available right now. Half of them are Japan only. And then I want you to guess how many previous free-to-play games Final Fantasy have had that are shut down.
At least 3.
24.
24?
Yeah, 24.
That's more than one a year, right? Like, that's like 3 a year since like... How?
I don't know, but 30 free-to-play titles, most of them mobile in total, and I don't even know if there's any series that have had any more free-to-play games.
And that's only the ones you're able to count. I'm sure there's some other ones at that point.
Oh, there might be some other ones, yeah, like, that I missed or, are not even known. There's one, though, that I want to focus on, and it's one we've talked about a little bit before, but I did some more in-depth research, and that is Final Fantasy VII The First Soldier. This was a free-to-play battle royale game from 2021 that was exclusive to phones. You guys have phones? Yeah, put it out on the phones. type stuff. This was actually a prequel to Final Fantasy VII, taking place 18 years before the game, telling like the story about how the soldier force was established, which is like some like mercenary group in the games, right? You battle up to 75 players in a lobby, and the gameplay was third person, and there's like a variety of modes like ranked and stuff like that. And it pretty much just looks like PUBG, but Final Fantasy style. Like if someone painted Final Fantasy characters over PUBG, it'd be pretty much this. And of course, since it's a mobile game, it also had a gacha system where you could pull like different weapon skins and like different characters and stuff like that. They released 4 seasons and a bunch of events throughout the first year, but 1 month before the 1-year anniversary was up, they announced that the game would shut down in January of 2023. So by that point, it was out for 15 months roughly, but didn't make it very far. Now, I do have another fun fact, and that is that there's 2 more free-to-play games specifically for Final Fantasy VII. One was like a racing game that was shut down in 2015, and then the other one is a more classic RPG that's called Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis. It is still around, and it retells a bunch of events of like the different Final Fantasy VII games, and it also retells the story of the first soldier within that game.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
I have very limited knowledge when it comes to the Final Fantasy universe. I was a Nintendo and Xbox kid. I've played a couple Final Fantasy things here and there. I remember we spent a couple hours trying to play that one MMO game with the big chickens.
Yeah, okay, the big chicken had the chocobos and everything, yeah.
So I'm a little confused with Final Fantasy. Back there when you were talking about it, you said it retells the story of all of the Final Fantasy VII games? Are there multiple games called Final Fantasy VII?
Yeah, there's like a couple. Yeah, I don't know all the names.
Why don't they just call it Final Fantasy VIII?
Well, because Final Fantasy VIII is a different timeline, universe, characters. Every number is a different set of stuff.
So like when people are talking about how Final Fantasy VII is coming out this year, it's not the same Final Fantasy VII that came out.
It's a remake.
Is it coming out still, or is it already out? I thought I saw someone playing it.
So yeah, they were probably playing like the first 2 parts of the remake trilogy. So like they decided to split the remake into 3 parts and reimagine the story and like expand it. And then the first one released all the way back in 2020 for the PlayStation 4. And then the second part of it released in like 2024. And then the third part is gonna come out in the future sometime.
Final Fantasy VIII has nothing to do with Final Fantasy VII.
No, it's just a world and like, you know, the general setting, but yeah.
I'm so lost. Okay, so Cloud, I've heard of this character. I think he's in Smash Bros. So he's like the Final Fantasy VII character.
Yeah, he's the main character from the main game, yeah.
From 7.
Yes, from 7.
Okay. I don't know. But thank you for filling me in. I'm learning a little bit of Final Fantasy, I guess, today.
And I mean, the remakes are pretty good. If you ever want to play a Final Fantasy game, play those remakes. Like,
could I just play the first Final Fantasy though? Because I like playing the old games, like see where a game started from.
I mean, you could play that too, yeah, but it's a little jank, you know. And the visuals on the remake are insane.
So I pulled up the character Cloud's Final Fantasy wiki page from the fandom.com, and it's like series appearances, right? And the second one is Final Fantasy VII snowboarding. What the hell is the Final Fantasy series?
I mean, dude, they do all kinds of spin-offs, dude. I don't know if there's a series of more games than Final Fantasy.
Right. Okay. He also apparently shows up in Final Fantasy Tactics, Dissidia Final Fantasy. What's Threat Rhythm Final Fantasy?
It's like a rhythm game.
Okay. It's good. It's all good. I don't need to know anymore. I just feel like this is too much to wrap my brain around nowadays. I feel like I should have gotten in the Final Fantasy hype in the 90s and early 2000s maybe. I could have kept up, but at 30 years old, dude, trying to understand the Final Fantasy timeline, it might be fast.
Important is there's a mainline Final Fantasy game every generation, usually. And then the spin-offs centered around that.
What's Final Fantasy VII G-Bike?
That's that mobile thing that I talked about that was shut down. The racing game that was shut down in 2015.
Okay, that's the one you were explaining. Okay. Hey, it actually looks kind of cool, though. Let's move on. How do we talk about Halo Infinite going free to play as a first for the series without us having a stroke while talking about it?
Oh, dude, that's... I don't know. Dude, I'm already feeling my blood pressure rising. Like, I don't even know if I'm ready for this, you know what I mean? It's like a loaded question.
I think everybody knows what happened with Halo Infinite. It was the first Halo game in a long time, coming off of Halo 5 Guardians. They went free to play. The multiplayer started off with a bang. A lot of people played the game when it launched in the free-to-play model with the multiplayer. And then the game very quickly diminished because 343 Industries had a terrible support for the game. Just like no content ready. A lot of content that was supposed to be there at launch got delayed from launch. And then they still launched the game. And then like they took a Christmas break off for weeks and like big team battle wasn't working. And it was a mess. It's weird because typically when a game comes out and it has a rocky launch, it's rocky on the first couple of days when the servers are overloaded, and then things get better and sometimes the games can recover. Sometimes it really hurts the games in the long run. It's weirder that Halo Infinite's like decay happened after the first couple of weeks of the game coming out. Like it survived like the launch and it had a lot of hype, and then they just did nothing with it. The game started falling apart and it took them a while to fix parts of the game. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of issues with like how skill-based matchmaking worked. There was a lot of issues with cheaters. I mean, there was a lot of issues with Halo Infinite.
I think there's still a lot of issues.
We've talked about Halo to death on this channel, but we can't make this video without talking about Halo Infinite. So here, this is what we did. And then we've talked about it now. If you'd like to add to the conversation about Halo Infinite, just leave it in a comment.
I want to add one more thing. Just want to point out the game lost 400,000 players within a month. On Steam, at least. You know, on Xbox, probably even more.
How do you even pull that off?
I mean, I would say free-to-play was a success for like the first 48 hours.
How many people are on Steam right now at the time of recording this? Exact.
2,000.
I mean, it's more than Sin Duality Echoes of Ada.
Isn't that game that Dim plays a lot?
Yeah, he plays it all the time, and there's literally less than 100 people on usually, or under 200 people on usually. That's a whole nother thing. I bought the game, played it for 5 minutes, got bored, refunded my money. That was my journey with... That's not even related to this. The game really should be free to play, though. I mean, the game's not good enough to charge full price for.
Hey, at least had the sensibility with Halo to do that, because Halo Infinite would have not been worth $60.
Well, they still sold the campaign, right? Did you forget about that? Hello? Did you freeze? This is really awkward. I'm standing here recording, and Luke's just staring at the camera frozen. Hello?
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 You hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe this is a sign from God that the Discord call keeps cutting out, because like otherwise we'd be here sitting like talking about Halo Infinite for like 20 minutes. So maybe we should move on. We talked about this game before, but Dead Island tried to launch a free-to-play MOBA game in 2014 after, you know, the big hype around League of Legends and Dota around that time. And Deep Silver picked the Swedish developer Stunlock Studios, which had released a MOBA before called Bloodline Champions, and they announced this as the first ever zombie online multiplayer battle arena, or short, Zomba. Get it? It's not a MOBA, it's a Zomba, but they flip some letters around. It's stupid.
I'm so confused why they would do anything with Dead Island that's not a Dead Island gameplay. Like the Dead Island first game.
Yes, and you know, didn't work out. But let's not get ahead of this, because actually what is interesting is the lore behind this game. So this game takes place on a smaller island next to the main island that you know from like Dead Island, right? Or the other island that you know from like Riptide, maybe. This was, I guess, at a time where they still were making the new games on islands, you know what I mean? Nowadays, they've given kind of up on that.
Were there, wait, what year was this?
2014.
So this was after they already were done making new games. They had like, they'd taken some time off, right? Like Riptide barely even counts as a new game, but sorry, I'm distracting from the important.
We don't even get that with Dead Island 2.
I appreciate that over Dead Island 2, yeah.
And the lore is actually insane. There's like this minor lifeguard character in the first Dead Island game, and I think he might be in Riptide. You get like quests from him, right? Not like a big character. His name is John Simanoi. The story of Dead Island Epidemic is that he escaped from the main island to the smaller island, and then the smaller island is also infected with zombies, and he almost dies, but then there's this group of people that saves him. And as it turns out, those people are also infected, but instead of turning them into zombies, it gives them like powers, which is how they explain like the MOBA abilities that the characters have in the game, right?
Awesome.
It's stupid. I don't know. It doesn't stop there, because gameplay is also nothing like a real MOBA. It's like a either PvE, like 4-player teams PvE, or 4v4v4 VE, like a 3-team 4-player each PvE mode. I don't know, some weird stuff. You just kind of run around, fight zombies, collect some resources, and then beat the other team that way. Boring as. And then there was 25 playable characters introduced. The game released into open beta at the end of 2014. In 2015, it was announced that the game would be shutting down in October of that year, and the development stopped immediately with the shutdown. So the game never made it out of beta, but it was free, even though they did sell like some founder packs and stuff like that early on. And I don't know, this was just a weird game. Like nobody asked for this. They tried riding off the MOBA hype at the time, but they didn't even include like the best elements of like the real MOBAs. I don't even know. This was like a clown show all around.
Okay, hey Luke, what does Legacy of Kain and Rocket League have in common?
Both have free-to-play games.
Yes.
Oh,
They also both technically are developed by Psyonix. I don't know if Psyonix did the original Legacy of Kain games, but they did do the game we're talking about called Nosgoth. So it's a spin-off of the Legacy of Kain games that started off as a free-to-play multiplayer in the mid-2010s, specifically went into early access in 2015, right around the same time that Rocket League would end up blowing up and becoming popular on the PlayStation 4. Now, Nosgoth was interesting because it was a multiplayer spin-off, but it wasn't a story-driven sequel. It was a multiplayer experience. And instead of continuing the Soul Reaver saga, it reimagined Nosgoth, which is like the world, right? After the events of Legacy of Kain Defiance, so it has like humans and vampires or something, and they're in like this war. But the gameplay was like this. There's 4 people on one side and 4 people on the other side, and there's like this asymmetrical combat going on. Humans have like ranged classes. They get to use like bow and arrows and crossbows and all that. And then there's vampires, and they're like more melee focused. And then there's 2 halves of the game. You switch sides between humans and vampire rounds. Interestingly enough, while this game was free to play and it utilized monetization, a lot of it was mostly not that egregious. It was like cosmetic microtransactions. There was XP boosts and like convenience items, and you could earn currency in the game. So it wasn't pay to win, but the unlock pacing was kind of maybe a little slow for some people. Now, what's unique here is we've talked about a lot of games, and this is another game that I'm going to go out on a limb and say it probably wasn't all that bad. I never got to play it, so, you know, I'm just kind of judging retrospectively, but it seemed like people liked the game, and the biggest complaint was that there wasn't enough maps and game modes to, like, keep you interested. It was kind of a smaller pool, but people liked the gameplay, and I mean, while there was no real story at all, the gameplay was good, and that's, I guess, what was important for something that wasn't really story-focused. So the game ended up staying in beta for a long time. Unfortunately, the game audience wasn't large enough to sustain ongoing operations, according to Square Enix, so the project got shut down. It never got to see a full release, which is weird to me because if a game releases in beta, how are they going to expect massive players to play it if the game's not even done yet? You can't bank on a beta that heavily, right? I mean, publishers do it all the time. You know what I'm trying to say, right? Normally, when a game series like this gets shut down, development studios can be at really big risk to just completely go under. But Psyonix ended up having Rocket League just blow the hell up, which ended up being really big because I forgot what Rocket League was called on the PS3. It had a different name. It was a rocket propelled battle cars or something.
Supersonic acrobatic rocket powered battle cars.
Yeah, the name wasn't helping them. So just calling their sequel Rocket League, I think, did them wonders.
And then they put it on the PS4 service. Like it launched into the PS4 service. That was a big thing.
Yeah, it was a big deal. And then later came out on Switch and it was on Xbox and PC and all of that. But that game wasn't free to play originally. And while, you know, Legacy of Kain's little spin-off Nosgoth started off as free to play and then failed, it didn't deter them when they decided to finally make Rocket League free to play later on, which I think actually helped. I mean, Rocket League isn't getting bigger for sure, right? But it's hung in there for quite a long time. I think free to play was probably the best option to keep the player base alive. At least they didn't do some stupid stuff like Overwatch with it. As far as Legacy of Kain, fans were obviously kind of disappointed because it was like the first entry in the series in over a decade. I mean, it wasn't what anyone wanted, but it wasn't awful either. And then 2023, Legacy of Kain's rights actually reverted back to Crystal Dynamics because of the Embracer Group acquisition. And people have been asking for Nosgoth to be revived at least to some extent, but it doesn't look like that's ever going to happen. The servers are still permanently offline. The game is considered lost. There doesn't seem to be any private servers, offline fan preservation or anything, so we can only go back and watch old YouTube videos, and that's kind of unfortunate because I think it was a cool premise for a shooter type game, you know, in the 2010s that was doing free to play stuff. It was interesting, but it wasn't like competitive enough to compete with like Rainbow Six Siege, which came out in 2015. What else came around that time? Overwatch in 2016. So yeah, I don't know. R.I.P. Nosgoth, which is also a terrible name, I feel like, for like a multiplayer shooter.
Yeah, it sounds like I don't know, like a nasal disease or something like you know.
Psyonix isn't the best at naming their games. We'll just leave it at that.
When we made the list of free-to-play games or franchises that went free-to-play, Monster Hunter Frontier Online came up, and when I looked into this, I was like, that's weird, because I did play this game. I remember that like in the late 2000s, I downloaded a VPN to play this Japan-exclusive Monster Hunter MMO, because I don't know, I was into MMOs, and people online kept saying this was like a banger. So I played a little bit. I don't remember too much of it, but it was good, and it was very successful because it got a release on the 360 in 2010, and then even got ports for the PS3, Wii U in 2013, and the Vita in 2014. And they did do pretty massive updates, different versions of the game over the years. So you were able to play a trial version for this initially for free that would end at a certain level cap, but the cap was increased every now and then with new updates and stuff. Otherwise, there was a monthly subscription like WoW. And in the early years, it had very good player numbers, but eventually, that slowed down. And also the game was from 2007, so the tech was very outdated. And by 2019, they decided that they were going to shut down the servers and you can't play it anymore. Also, for the last month of the game, they did make it completely free to play. So there's that. Rest in peace. I would have liked to play this game again for a little trip of memory lane. Trying to do like a bugle horn. I should buy a bugle horn.
You should.
Is it hard to play, you think?
Probably.
Actually, after recording this, I learned that there's a revival project run by fans that is free, so I'll have to check that out soon. There were some more Monster Hunter specific free-to-play titles that came out, and one of them was another MMO called Monster Hunter Online that was for China only, that was also shut down in 2019 as well. And now there's some free-to-mobile games out or coming out. One of them is Monster Hunter Now, which is like a Pokemon Go type game that is still available. You can download it for free. And they did announce Monster Hunter Outlanders, which will be a more classic Monster Hunter style mobile game that will also be free to play, coming out sometime in the future. Final Fantasy had a lot of free to play games. I was surprised by that. But when I started looking to The Sims, there's a couple. So firstly, Sims Online launched in 2002, and that was a subscription based MMO that was like basically a failure. Couldn't really attract players. People didn't care for it, and it was more of a social game and less of a Sims game. So, that didn't work. And I'm not saying there wasn't anyone who enjoyed it. There was a community on that game. But when it came to mainstream appeal, it never really appealed to the same audience that the normal Sims games would. And EA, they wanted to do something to like revive it, maybe throw a little Hail Mary. So in 2007, they relaunched the game with the title EA Land, and now it would be free to play. Basically what they did is they just took all the cities you could go to in Sims Online and merged them into one mega city, and now you could buy land in EA Land and then build your house there, I guess. There was actually no new content with this relaunch. So players just kept like leaving, and by 2008 EA announced they're gonna shut it down. So this relaunch was a pretty big failure. That wasn't the only attempt. So this attempt ended in 2008, and in 2011 they were like, hell yeah, let's try it again. So they launched The Sims Social, which was a Facebook game that barely lasted 2 years before it was shut down.
Yo, it's crazy how many games came out on Facebook, by the way. Like, just a weird time.
It's true. We should do a video on Facebook games, like Facebook spin-offs.
But do you think anybody would watch that? Because I avoided Facebook games like The Plague. You think people would watch it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be interesting. Like, we have to put our stuff through looking into these awful games for people, so could be fun.
Dude, we have to log back into Facebook just to make the video. That'd be the hardest challenge we've done. Dude, we'll be sitting there playing Farmville in 2025.
Oh, no. Anyway, so same year they launched the Sims Facebook game, they also launched the Sims free-to-play for iOS. And then it would also come to Android, BlackBerry, and Windows phones too. And that game actually is still around. You can go to the App Store and download it, and that apparently is the definitive mobile game for The Sims.
How many people are still playing on the BlackBerry?
Nobody, and also those versions are abandoned. I don't think they developed still the BlackBerry and the Windows Phone version. But back then, in 2011 or 2012, 13, whenever they came out, I guess they still were pushing it. Also Windows phones, like I feel like BlackBerries, I can maybe see like someone still having a BlackBerry, but Windows phone, that's for some freaks.
Do you know we recently also like flame Windows phones in a video recently, or was it in this video? Maybe last video? I don't remember, but I definitely said something about Windows phones back then too.
Anyways, in 2018, they were like, we have one Sims mobile game. Why don't we make a second one? So they launched The Sims Mobile, which was a separate game from free play, but it was also free to play. So they had two free Sims mobile games for some reason. And I did try to figure out what the difference is, and apparently free play is more like a normal Sims game, and then mobile is like a simplified experience for people that just want to play a game for a short amount of time. But The Sims Mobile only lasted a couple years. I mean, it did last a couple years actually, which is surprising. And it was delisted on October 21st of this year, which is tomorrow. for us recording this, but when this video comes out,
Oh. We could still play it.
we could still play it. But when the video comes out, it's already gone. So rest in peace. We also can't forget Sims 4 also went free to play in 2022, since they can just sell all those DLCs anyways. So why not make the main game free to play, I guess. And I learned that they're working on a new Sims game that is not the Sims 5 called Project Renee, and it is going to be a free-to-play multiplayer game that is going to be cross-play across all major platforms. Not much information is known, and they said it's going to take years before it comes out, so we'll see. Maybe it'll get cancelled.
Where's Sims 5, by the way?
I don't know, no announcement. I mean, they're still making new DLC for Sims 4, so I guess they're still selling big on those DLCs, so I don't know.
They'll probably make Sims 5, and then they'll sell all the DLC from Sims 4 for Sims 5.
Yes, I can see that.
But you have to buy it again, something like that.
Yeah. Remember this, if it comes true, we gotta clip it.
Clip it and put it on TikTok.
Gundam is a massive franchise, right? Like, they have toys, they have animes, movies, and they have video games, many video games over the years. And usually the video games are full price, but in 2022, they went free to play with a hero shooter. And we actually played this a bit when it came out on console, and it wasn't that bad. It was like a little like unpolished and like kind of felt raw, but it was pretty much a run-of-the-mill 6v6 hero shooter. We had some fun playing it, and it just never really got popular in the West, at least. I heard in Japan it's a little bit more popular. They did eventually announce that the server were gonna shut down for good, and there's actually this funny story because we tried playing before it shut down. We were in queue for like almost 2 hours. We get into a game, we're like, hell yeah, finally our last game of Gundam Evolution ever. And then the match got cancelled because someone left. And we never got to play that final match of Gundam Evolution.
I was going to say we could make this video longer if we just played the entire live stream of us trying to play Gundam Evolution, but I don't know what that'd do for our watch retention stats. I vaguely remember walking around in that game because I don't think I played that much of the game when it actually launched. So I vaguely remember walking around. And that's about it. So I'm pretty limited. Didn't they have microtransactions and cosmetics that were really expensive?
I don't remember. So maybe they just weren't that cool. Actually, yeah, maybe it's just like different colored mechs and stuff. Maybe it's hard to sell people like that stuff in 2020.
I feel like with Gundam, though, it'd be really easy to sell like skins for a game like that.
Apparently not. Otherwise, it would have stayed.
Like, you have a cool looking mech? I mean, no. Maybe the gameplay was just not good.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was fine, but yeah. I mean, it didn't work out.
As far as games I still wanted to talk about, I have it in my notes, but I don't really think we need to make a big topic out of it. But obviously, the big game that did go free to play is Call of Duty with Warzone. I mean, it was a launch with the Battle Royale, and it was a pretty big deal. And while it's kind of one of the more boring games to talk about because everybody knows about Warzone, I want to point out, it is interesting how successful Warzone ended up being because of the timing, but also it wasn't their first foray into a Battle Royale. It was actually their third foray into doing a Battle Royale. Modern Warfare Remastered had a Chinese Battle Royale mode, and then we had Blackout with Call of Duty Black Ops 4, which was exciting and ambitious for something I think that got like thrown together in a few months, but I think the fact that the game wasn't free to play made the player number drop dramatically, especially when they were really slow on updates. And at the very least, say what you will about Warzone, I mean, it's incredibly successful even with the decline in popularity of Battle Royale games. You gotta kind of give credit to Activision because at least they learned from the roadmap of Blackout. They needed to have consistent updates and do the free to play stuff, and then look what happened with Warzone. That, tied with the pandemic, made that incredibly explosive in popularity, and they quickly elevated themselves to one of the most popular Battle Royale games in an already saturated market. We had to talk about Call of Duty. We just don't have to talk about it for a long time. So there we go. So did we miss any games? Probably. A lot of games have done free to play. We tried to at least mention most of them, like Rainbow Six Siege. You guys already know how I feel about it. If we missed any games that you guys wanted us to talk about, let us know in the comments down below. Huge shout out to our patrons and YouTube members making these videos possible. You guys should sign up if you're not spending money. We like money. That sounds worse than it needs to be. Check out this video YouTube thinks you'll like, and make sure you're subscribed. That's more important than anything else. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys very soon with a new video. Bye.